Hi, everyone that's joining us. I just wanted to make sure that Jolyn was also in this room. Jolyn's here. Can you give us a shout?
I don't think she's here.
I don't think she's here either. Okay, so maybe we'll give her a couple extra minutes to join us. How's everybody doing today? Cool. Head nods. Great. I'll take thumbs ups, whatever you guys got. Cool, cool. Okay.
Maybe. Maybe let's get started, or you can.
Yeah. We can get started if everybody's ready. I'm Vargas. Lauren Vargas is my full name. I go by Vargas. I'm a makerspace coordinator at the New York Hall of Science inside of our makerspace. And what I do is I help coordinate and oversee programs that we're running on our weekends for visitors. So that means families of all sizes and ages, creating hands-on workshops where we're teaching either tool or skill building, or exploration of materials and tools as well. And that runs the gamut from hand tools to coding, 3D printing, and everything in between. With me presenting today as a facilitator is also Sam. Sam, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Sam. I'm also a coordinator in the Makerspace at the Hall of Science. And most of my programming focuses on after-school programs and community groups.
Cool. So let's get started. Sam, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
So the program that we run was bringing after school to a place where they could run maker-style activities for various amounts of kids and different grade levels to learn what is making and how to make, with a slant of STEM. So there were various different types of activities that incorporated those different aspects into them. Sam, if you want to do the next slide, we'll talk more about what those activities are. But first, let's talk about what making is. Some of you may be familiar with making, but for those of you who aren't, the way that we set up making and our experiences and our activities are open-ended explorations of tools, materials, and skills of various types. So they're anything from exploring how cardboard works and how you can build with cardboard, all the way to understanding coding and how coding can interact with automating something or creating something digitally with 3D design. And so all of those experiences are designed to be scaffolded. So anything from low facilitation to very high facilitation. It's all about meeting the visitor or whoever we're teaching where they're at. And the way that we implement that is using inquiry-based learning. So thinking more about why and how do things work in order to inform their understanding and allow them to have that agency in terms of what they design and how they interact with it. So when we present a tool like a hammer, we ask kids, what is a tool? What does a tool do? And what do we think this tool does? To allow for that sort of mindset and that framework to be built into their minds so that when presented with all other types of tools and materials and skills, they can apply that same mindset and really feel ownership over their interests, their design, and everything in between that as well. So those maker activities, that all of that is found in each of our maker activities that we run. Now, if we go to the next slide, we can talk about the program that we ran. Now, this is a curriculum we developed for 6 activities that build on top of each other. The activities explore everything from hand tools, open-ended designing, basic circuitry, and even hand sewing. All to allow for the students to explore what it's like to learn these skills, interact with these tools probably for the first time, and be able to make whatever they'd like with it. We start with a journal making activity that teaches hand tools, hammer and nail, with sewing, which then allows us to move into the next activity where they learn to sew with conductive thread in order to make a soft circuit, or a circuit that uses textile material and basic electronics, which then feeds into another activity where they use that same understanding about how a circuit works to build a little bot that moves around. And then they level that up in the following week, learning to create a scribble bot, a bot that has the same circuitry, but now we add markers to it and it can draw on its own. And we present those skills and those tools so that in the end, how their final product look is up to them. We only have a small amount of scaffolding built into each one, again, to build that agency as well. So these activities and this program is done over 6 weeks with one cohort of kids from anywhere, group size about 10 to 15, and originally designed for middle school kids. The first phase of this program is Makerspace staff modeling how to do these activities and running these 6 weeks with a facilitator that works at a particular after-school site, who will also be trained in how to do these activities for themselves and have a greater understanding of how everything works, so that they, in the second phase of this program, will do another 6 weeks with another 10 to 15 kids, and we will shadow and just provide further support and guidance as they also implement these 6 activities. And these activities are all meant to apply to lots of different types of kids and abilities, so they can be scaffolded up or down depending on what kind of audience they are teaching to. And so what that training looks like, if Sam wants to go to that next, to the next slide. So a major component of this program, in addition to being 6 fun weeks for kids to interact and learn, is a series of facilitation trainings so that we can teach STEM specialists and after-school leaders as to how these 6 weeks work, and then understanding the inquiry-based learning that we're also teaching to the facilitators themselves, so that they can then guide the kids to the same level of questioning and thinking to allow for that open-ended exploration in the end. So we run through each activity, we model how we would teach to the kids so that they have that sort of understanding of how it is taught and what is the makerspace style. And then we also provide lots of reflection and space for the facilitators to kind of talk about what would work in their space and what wouldn't, and how they may scale things up or down depending on how their kids are, because they know them best. In addition to that, we produced quite a few videos as well for each activity, so that you'd have a reference. So, nope, that was actually perfectly timed, Sam. But
Ready?
I think we're ready to show you guys one of the videos that we produced that is also provided on a website, the Y4Y website, where you can see all of the videos that we produced for each of these activities, so that you can get a preview of the types of things that we taught. Oh, no sound? the sound's really fun.
I'm trying. Did you have anything else to add on that, Vargas, or should I get started on the next slide?
No, I think we should definitely move on to talking about how we actually implemented this into our different sites in the fall of 2019.
Yeah, so as is life, what we thought the expectations, or not what we thought the expectations were, but what we thought was going to happen with this program wasn't exactly how it turned out in practice. So the program is intended for middle schoolers. We ended up working with 4th and 5th graders. We initially anticipated class sizes at 15, and sometimes it was about 20 to 25 kids per group. And the facilitators that we were training sometimes weren't the same facilitators that we were given when we implemented this into the after school settings. And we kind of had to adapt to these situations. So when you take these circumstances and the reality of the after school program and combine it with the fact that a lot of these workshops are introducing advanced concepts and physical skills, and it's really exploratory and open-ended, we were realizing that the students needed a lot more individual help and attention than we were able to meet in the time of the workshop. And it led to some of the kids not being able to finish their projects in time. And that led to frustration. Some kids were throwing things out, and this isn't what we wanted. We wanted the kids to feel excited and empowered by what they were making and not frustrated because they needed help with parts of the projects that require a lot of fine motor skills, or frustrated because the staff was too busy helping other kids with their problems. And then by the end of the day, it was time to go home. So we looked at the reality of the situation and the fact that these kids are younger. There's a lot more of them than we thought there was going to be. And we began thinking of ways that we could kind of level the playing field and make sure that they're getting the most out of this experience, each kid's in the most equitable way possible. So we took all the workshops and we decided to streamline them and determine what skills and what educational content we wanted to focus on for each workshop. This way all the kids would be on the same page, and we would be able to kind of come up with a step-by-step process for each workshop. And the kids would be able to do the steps along with us, and everyone would be able to learn the content and complete the projects in the time that we had to do that. So there was some good and bad to this. There was less customization than before. The kids were kind of mostly making the same thing, but at the end of the session, there was a lot more pride and self-satisfaction with what they made, and that's really what we were looking for. To kind of explain this a little bit better, I'll start with this one. So the second workshop, the first one is the journal making, which you saw the video for, and the second one is called soft circuits. And the original version of this workshop involved using a conductive thread to hand sew these battery packs and LEDs onto felt. These components are really small, and the sewing that needs to be done to power the circuit is pretty intricate and specific. So in terms of fine motor skills, it's a pretty difficult activity, but at the same time, you're also learning electronics. And while middle schoolers kind of would have the fine motor skills needed for this, and a lot of them were already exposed to circuitry, this was pretty challenging for our 4th and 5th graders who were learning this for the first time and needed a lot of individual help with the sewing. So when we first ran this program, a lot of the kids weren't able to finish in time, and we saw some projects being thrown out. And so again, we didn't want this to happen, so we decided to kind of scrap the sewing and give the kids a really solid foundation in circuitry. The remaining 4 weeks of workshops all involved different types of circuit activities, so we figured if we could really get that concept down, it would help us in the future and make sure the kids really understood what they were making. And we also made sure that they realized that there's all kinds of ways you can use electronics and textiles, and thought a lot about the creativity of the individual projects they were making. So this kind of worked. These concepts stuck, and in the weeks after this, we would do a circuit recap at the beginning of each session, introduce the new project, and they were able to connect the information that they learned in this soft circuits workshop to the new project. And then they were also able to decorate their work, and they left feeling accomplished and proud of what they made. And it was very, very exciting to see. So another way the streamlining kind of worked was for our paper circuits workshop. And in paper circuits, you can see it here, you're using a copper tape, and that's your wire, and you're finding creative ways to power an LED. And it's an awesome project, it's one of our favorites, but copper tape is notoriously challenging. It rips really easily, and if it does, it won't work. And it's just kind of hard to work with, and it involves a lot of facilitators kind of helping each kid with their projects when things don't go the right way. So since it's intricate and needs to be made this in a specific way, we decided to streamline it by breaking it down into these 5 steps and having the kids go through each step with us. We are able to pass out materials and take away materials as they were introduced. And again, the kids understood exactly what they were doing as they were doing this. And kind of like the soft circuits, it is a little bit less customization because everyone's doing it the same way, but they're able to fully understand what they're doing. And then, so for the 3rd week, what we did was we gave them all of the materials from the paper circuits workshop and the soft circuits workshop and kind of let them create whatever they wanted. And in this workshop, they were able to use these creativity skills, and they were able to have the foundational skills that they needed from these more step-by-step projects and apply it to a more creative project. So less kids needed individual help because they had that foundation there, and their projects were creative and great. And it just kind of showed us that this process worked. So I guess kind of the theme of this experience is that expectations don't always meet reality, and that's kind of what we're all dealing with right now with COVID, and what we thought was going to be happening for this second cycle of implementation isn't what's happening. So now we're in a place where we're trying to think about what we want to do next and how we want to continue to offer these programs in a digital way, and adapt to the reality of our current situation. So I guess, unless Vargas, you have anything to add, maybe we can start discussing this as a group and
Yeah.
ways to kind of transition to this digital world.
Right. And I just want to add on to what Sam was saying. Ultimately, we were responding to not only our expectations, but what was the reality of the ability to the kids we taught, but also the ability of the facilitators we were guiding as well. So again, that scaffolding kind of comes back into play, because that scaffolding is supposed to address educational goals. And so ultimately, that's what helped us to decide how to scaffold. Like Sam was saying, the educational goal was just to be able to create that foundation of understanding circuits, and not so much that we wanted them to be able to, everyone create a very unique design. Like that is an educational goal that's added on for an older and more experienced audience, where, you know, addressing where each of those kids are at in terms of ability is where we decide how the scaffolding works, and then what is the most important educational goal we're trying to address. So that to me was really the theme of like learning to do this program, how to implement it, and also create a valuable experience for the kids. You know, we received a lot of positive feedback from the program directors of those sites, and that we were a program that was looked forward to by those kids that don't often have access to STEM learning, and STEM learning in such a much more lax and lax in terms of like, it's not in the style of school, and so much more of a creative kind of slant. So we have about 20 minutes left. Jolyn is also here to help us facilitate. We were mentioned, hi, thanks for joining us. Sam mentioned that we weren't able to implement the second cycle because of COVID and schools being shut down. And so Sam and I immediately thought about how to translate our work and the main work, which was teaching how to facilitate these activities, into maybe a digital realm. So that wasn't implemented yet, but it's sort of like what we think our next steps are until we can implement the second cycle of in-person facilitation. But we'd love to open it up to the participants in this group to give us any questions or comments that they had based on what they've learned about this program or about our experience as well.
Yeah, Vargas, if I can just jump in before I hear from the group. I just want to apologize for being late. I didn't take a longer break. I was just getting into the right break session. So thank you all for being here. I just want to just thank Lauren and Sam for presenting. I firsthand have experienced a site, Kids at Work, making the soft circuits. I was blown away. It brought me back to my teaching days. It promises, you know, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, like their professional development, the work that they do with your kids in that 45-minute block or the hour block, however your schedule is, it's a perfect fusion of art making and science, especially with New York State standards. I was explaining it to them that it covers electrical circuits, which is very important in grades 3 and 4, if that's the age group that you work with. The lesson plans are all like, they're modeling of the work with that first cycle incorporates higher order questioning, thinking, just how the practical, like, you know, if you have 2 activity facilitators in your after school program, how to make it work. It's just so practical, and it's just it's a lot of best practices. And then I got to see the professional development piece, like how do they turnkey it to your activity leaders, whoever you choose to select for the program. And it's great for you to bring back to your directors. Many of you are directors, or to your superintendents. The activities are there, and if you are interested in this program, you could always send me an email, and I'll connect with Vargas and Sam and their director, and we can go there from there. Because I know right now they're stationed in New York City, but I wanted to extend it to rest of state, and then we could talk about museums that are in your local area, or even work with the with NYSCI. And then the other piece I just wanted to say is this is a great program for sustainability. So once you go through a full cycle, it is something that you can use for your following year and not need NYSCI anymore. So I just wanted to say that, yeah, but I hope if anyone has questions or comments. I know there was a couple about scaffolding. I totally agree. Please ask. You can unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat.
And thank you for those kind words. We truly appreciate it, especially it being this is a makerspace baby. These 6 activities, and so it was passed on to Sam and I to implement for these after-school programs. So we were very excited to help implement it in all of these great schools. We truly loved teaching these kids. They were younger than we were supposed to teach, but they were so earnest and lovely in their passion for learning these things that were kind of difficult. And
yeah,
so it was a really great experience. So we're happy to talk about anything and all aspects of this program.
Yeah, so I see here, can someone send information and cost to me? So yeah, of course we'll send out, probably with the multitude of other things from this symposium, we could add the link to IMLS. But, as far as cost, I don't know if Sam and you guys, we haven't discussed how that's going to work with rest of state. I just kind of want to get an interest and see, what rest of state programs or programs in New York City that are kind of farther away from NYSCI. I know Vargas and Sam, you can chime in. These are programs right now that are really close to the museum, and Sam and Vargas go back and forth from the museum to your sites. So if you are really interested, just send us an email, I'll send you the link. But I know Sam and Vargas, for the New York City sites that are working with you guys in the fall, all materials were provided. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yes, and we also have Danny Kirk here, who was more involved with the financial side of things. If you wanted to speak onto any of that as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Denny is the Makerspace manager. So he helped oversee our site implementing this to a couple different schools. And then we were also part of facilitating training for other museums who are also implementing this 6-week program at other after-school sites around the country as well. But to answer that about the materials we brought with us every single week, both the one-time use materials and then the multiple use tools. With an option that if a site could see themselves sustainably implementing this program in their after-school site for for however long, we were open to giving them our supplies so that they could continue on and have that leader train other after-school leaders as well to implement this programming. That's a really nice aspect of this program, is that the scaffolding is what makes it applicable to a lot of different groups and spaces.
Yeah, and speaking of scaffolding, there was a question in the chat box. I know that you guys talked about modifying the program for the young kiddies. and then it's really aged for middle school. Can there be adaptation for high school level?
Sam, do you want to take that? I have some thoughts, but
I think that's definitely possible. I think there's ways to scale up and down all of this. There's definitely, I think since they have the foundational skills often already, I mean, we would definitely go over everything again, but then maybe providing more advanced electronics platforms that they could use as well, like Arduino, Raspberry Pi, Microbit.
Or even just
Yeah,
more advanced circuitry concepts. We didn't go over what series circuits are versus parallel circuits. That's something that we can get into because it's slightly higher level thinking, and allows for when they are doing a circuit exploration, like make your own project based on the information we gave you, you could get a little bit more creative in like how many more lights you're adding and how the energy flows from the source to a component. There are multiple ways that you can definitely scale up for the type of attention that teenagers have and the more complex activities that they'd like to be challenged by. But this, even the middle school, just basic program is great for any type of beginner. And I think Jolynn can attest to it. The adults that we were teaching in the training had plenty enough challenge with what we were showing. I think it's still pretty compelling for any age group.
Yeah, and I think the adaptations that you guys made with the copper wire are good for elementary, even those middle schoolers. But that sewing, high school, upper, like 8th graders and up, I think that just the art making alone is pretty intense. And then the vocabulary, I think there's definitely modifications, but I think the next round, I hope that we get to pair Sam, and I think they've done a lot of adaptations for the elementary level unexpectedly. And so moving forward, I think with the middle school, we might be able to see how to, I don't know, scaffold it up, right? I would think for the high schoolers.
Absolutely.
Like get more advanced, you know what I'm saying, modifications.
Yeah, or maybe make it more of like a bigger project. Like the soft circuits could be turning an item of clothing you have into an electronic device, or just kind of make it more project-based and relevant to their lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Solve a problem kind of thing.
I think my favorite sort of discovery in teaching this and modeling this for the elementary school kids is the hand sewing and learning how to use a hammer were really powerful skills for the kids to learn and feel a sense of agency for, because they often saw the adults in their lives and their community also have these skills as well, and had a sense of connection with their household, with their family, because they saw mom and dad or auntie, uncle, grandma, grandpa, whoever, also doing this either as a job or something they did around the home. And it was really lovely community connection that, I learned how to sew with thread, and now I'm taking this very ingrained and intrinsic skill that's part of my family into making something that has electronics in it. They felt innovative in themselves of adapting something that grandma taught them to do, or that they've seen her do, and now they're making a light up rocket ship or something on a piece of felt.
We have another question. Thank you, Christina, for sharing. I have actually 2 more, maybe Sam and Vargas, you can shed some input. I could see maybe the kits with materials sent to kids with an introductory video, a small project with step-by-step directions, and the kids send the pics back. The tricky part is that do they need to have some things at home, like a hammer and an adult, to work with them if they're young?
There are, sorry, did I cut you off?
No, go for it.
So that's funny you mentioned that. So we've been doing this series of making at home videos for a different project, and bookbinding was the one we did for that. And there are definitely ways that, like, if you're not able to send tools to the kids, that you could complete the activity using the tools you have. So we made options like if you have a stapler, you can staple your book together. Or if you have two pieces, you don't need to use a hammer, you can get two pieces of cardboard and then like a pen or some sort of poking tool and poke the paper and then use the cardboard on top, and you just poke holes into that and sew it without having to use a hammer. So maybe just like modifications, and then kind of frame it around the way of like, we're trying to come up with a design challenge and like solve this problem. Maybe you don't have all these tools, but how can you figure out ways to make this using what you have at home, and kind of gamify that concept? I think could be fun.
Yeah. And
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in addition to like the hammer question, every time I've seen folks see a 3-year-old wield a hammer, there's a lot of hesitation and fear. And we approach teaching how to use tools not from a place of fear, but of how does this tool work and how does it best work in order to get what you need to get done. So if I need a nail to be inside of something, how do I even hold this hammer correctly? Because that's the best way it works. So we don't come at it from a direction of like, if you don't do this correctly, you will get hurt. Because we think it's far more powerful and effective if we show you how it's supposed to work and how to do it in the way that it's designed so that you only get positive results. But we also have lots of different mods to help with the other aspects of that, especially using a nail, like using other tools to hold the nail, using different kinds of nails. And they make really teeny tiny hammers too, if we have little arms that can't quite grab a full-size hammer. There are a lot of mods you can do depending on the ability of who you're teaching.
And got one more because we have 7 minutes left. And I just want to point out, if you haven't, chimed in the chat box, just to kind of keep, as the Resource Center say, we just for accountability measures, make sure you just sign your name in the chat box so we know that you came to this breakout session. But there's one more. Danny kind of responded, but I just wanted to see maybe Sam and Vargas, if you wanted to provide some thought. Does it get into dimensions? Thank you, Monique, for bringing this up. Does it get into dimensions, measurements, purpose of circuits, and what they're used for? When I think of STEM activities, I think of how does electricity work and using activities that teach that. Are there activities of this nature?
So it's not really getting into dimensions and measurements per se. So when we introduce it, we usually start with the frame of, if I were to make a flashlight, what would I need to make? And get them to kind of be like, oh, light, wire, battery, and then introduce like switch. And we'll introduce like negative and positive. That's a big one. We want them to understand that there's like a negative and a positive side. A circuit will short if you don't have everything kind of like separate. We talk about like conductivity, but we're not really introducing like more of the technical terms.
Yeah. With
this age level anyway.
Right, yeah, the math behind how much voltage something has and like the load that goes across the wire is not something that is, entirely appropriate or necessary for them to get the project done at a middle school or high school level. Middle school or elementary level. Rather, that is what could be scaled up for teenagers because they probably have covered electricity, and then now you can get into the why and the physics of how electricity works. So that I can definitely see working in that way. But if you wanted to be teach about dimensions and planning and logic and building in that way, you can certainly add that onto the activities as well.
Yeah, for us the focus is kind of like understanding what's happening on what they're making, and then also making that thing their own.
Exactly.
Okay, we have about 4.5 minutes left. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts? Comments? It could be about, well, I would hope it'd be about IMLS, but even if it's about the symposium, that's fine too. But
more about Makerspace or NYSCI.
Yep.
Some of the things that Sam and I were thinking about in terms of translating this work online, what we noticed anyways is that this training, the 2-day training that we do, it's 2 days because it's supposed to be, I believe, 12 hours of training hours. And what we found, like in life, it's hard to coordinate a lot of different schedules. And it's hard when there's high turnover rates at different after-school sites. That's just a fact of life, especially when most of those sites have part-time workers. So Sam and I were thinking about how to adapt this anyways online because of that fact. But COVID kind of brought that more to the forefront. And it's sort of one of the ideas that we're having is make this an online resource anyways to learn how to do the activities. Maybe you get a kit of materials, and just like you would learn to do something on YouTube with a bunch of stuff, it would be done in a similar way. And then in addition, the training about inquiry-based learning and how to actually facilitate it in the style that that we implemented would be a resource as well for sites, so that they could continue to train multiple leaders to do these activities as well, as long as they have the tools and they can keep purchasing materials that can get reused or at least used once.
Yeah. You know, it's so funny that you mentioned that, Vargas, because that was a question here if the training will be virtual. But when it comes to materials, guys, I just want to remind you, and this is something you can bring back to your teams. You know, this is a free program if the grant does get expanded and rest of state gets included in other New York City programs. But within your budgets, you know, your fiscal staff could allot some of the materials and supplies that go into your budgets in the beginning of the year, and that could be part of your budget. It's not something extra, right? So if STEM is already in your goals and objectives, there you go. Or if it's something that you want to add, then you know you would just submit a program modification. So this is something that, you know, I don't want you to think it's an added expense. It's something that you can include within your budgets, and I hope that makes sense. And so with the virtual piece that you were just speaking to, Vargas, is there considerations for the PD, that 6 week in the beginning? With that, you guys kind of thinking about that? I know we were having those discussions, but if you can't give us a complete answer right now, that's fine. Maybe it's something that's still in the process of, you know, everything's still like.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things are not up to us, and there's a lot of things that remain to be seen in general in the world. So me mentioning that was just in to say that Sam and I saw the possibility of that because there was a need anyways before the world changed, and so we still think that this is a viable way to address how things worked in the past and how things will continue to work in the future. So
Yeah.
you think that there's potential there. We're not sure yet. We are literally iterating and innovating how this would work, because it's not how it was ever done before. In fact, we were training other museum sites. They all flew into New York and were personally taught how to do this, to be able to teach it in their states or their cities. There's potential. I know there's only 30 seconds left. But
I just wanted to check in, because I'm not automatically closing the rooms. I just wanted to make sure to see if you needed another minute or two while the other folks are wrapping up.
Yeah, unless there's other questions.
If not, you guys can just leave your breakout space on your own. It says on the side, leave room. I just don't want to abruptly end it for everybody, okay? All right,
Thanks, Jorge.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for attending our presentation. Please feel free to reach out to us. I
put our email.
My email in the chat, should anyone want. Please let us know if you have any other lingering questions or anything that pops up later. We'd love to talk about it. And thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
In the other room.
Tom, thank you so much again. You did a great job.
You were a great co-host. Thank you.
I see a lot of people got kicked out, so I'm just admitting them in.
We totally have to give Jorge like a virtual hug.